There's a silent moment in every soul's life where the inner whisper becomes an uncontrollable roar, and a simple word, enough, echoes through every layer of existence, shattering invisible contracts signed long before our birth. Have you ever felt it? That precise instant when something within you awakens from a deep slumber, as if an ancestral force finally found the courage to break chains it didn't even know it was carrying. Edgar Cayce, the visionary who accessed the Akashic records through altered states of consciousness, often spoke of these moments of sudden awakening, where the soul finally recognizes its own divinity and refuses to accept less than it deserves. When you utter the word enough with true conviction, not as a cry of despair, but as a sacred declaration of self-worth, you're not just setting a boundary in the present, you're rewriting karmic contracts your soul has carried through multiple lifetimes, releasing patterns of submission, unnecessary sacrifice, and misdirected love that may have repeated for hundreds of lives. Cayce taught that each soul carries within it the echoes of all its past experiences, and that often the relationship patterns we live today are direct reflections of dynamics we established in other time dimensions. That person who always puts others' needs above their own, who empties themselves to fill others, who diminishes themselves so others may shine, that soul is most likely repeating a pattern originating from lives where service meant survival, where self-sacrifice was mistaken for sanctity. But there's something profoundly magical that happens when you finally say enough to these old patterns. It's as if the entire universe has been waiting for this declaration of spiritual independence, for this moment where you recognize that honoring yourself isn't selfishness, it's a sacred responsibility to the creative force that dwells within you. Imagine, for a moment, a woman who has always accepted crumbs of affection, who has always settled for relationships where she gave 90% and received 10. In her deepest meditations, she might glimpse images of a life where she was a devoted servant, where her identity was completely tied to serving others, or perhaps a life where she was taught that her worth resided only in her ability to please, to never inconvenience, to always be available. But then the day comes, and it always comes, where something within her rises like a sleeping goddess. It might be after one more disappointment, one more broken promise, one more situation where she found herself begging for attention that should flow naturally. And then from the depths of her soul emerges this transformative word, enough. The moment she utters this word with true inner authority, not as an empty threat, but as a spiritual decree, her entire vibrational frequency shifts. Cayce spoke of how our thoughts and emotions create energetic fields that attract corresponding experiences. When we shift our inner frequency from victim to sovereign, from needy to self-sufficient, from beggar to deserving, the universe has no choice but to respond to this new vibration. It's fascinating to observe how the people around her begin to react differently almost immediately. Those who were accustomed to receiving her energy without giving anything in return become confused, even irritated. Some might try to win her back with temporary promises or emotional manipulation. Others simply walk away because they can no longer extract from her what they once freely took. But something even more extraordinary happens within her. For the first time, perhaps in many lifetimes, she begins to experience what it truly means to love herself. And herein lies one of Cayce's deepest teachings. Self-love isn't a luxury or an achievement. It's a remembrance. It's the recognition of a truth that has always been there, buried under layers of conditioning and karmic wounds. The self-love that awakens after saying enough isn't the same as self-esteem built through external accomplishments or validation from others. It's something far more primal and powerful. It's the reconnection with the divine spark residing at the center of her being, that flicker of light that has never been touched by any wound, any rejection, any traumatic experience. Cayce often spoke of how each soul is a unique aspect of universal consciousness, and that recognizing our own divinity is both a right and a responsibility. When we finally say enough to the patterns that diminish us, we are essentially remembering who we truly are behind all the masks and roles we've assumed. Think of how many situations you've tolerated that your soul knew were unacceptable. How many times you've been silent when you should have spoken, bowed when you should have stood tall, apologized for existing when you should have celebrated your presence. Each time we do this, we are essentially betraying our own divine essence. But the soul is patient and wise. It knows that every experience, even the most painful ones, are opportunities for growth and awakening. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom in our own denial to finally find the strength to rise up and declare our inherent dignity. And here's something few realize. The universe constantly conspires to lead us to this moment of awakening. That toxic relationship that drags on beyond any logic, that job that sucks your life force, that family dynamic that feels like a battlefield, all these situations are, in fact, disguised invitations for you to practice self-love. It's as if life is an elaborate spiritual school, where each challenge is designed to strengthen different aspects of our soul. And one of the most important lessons we've come to learn in this incarnation is how to honor and protect our own divine essence. When you finally say enough and truly mean it, when you cease being an extension of others' needs and expectations and become the author of your own story, something magical happens in your energy field. You stop radiating the frequency of unconditional availability that attracts people willing to take advantage of your kindness. Instead, you begin to emanate an energy of self-respect that acts like a magnet for experiences more aligned with your true worth. It's almost as if you're sending a message to the universe: I love myself enough to not accept less than I deserve. And what you deserve, according to the teachings of Edgar Cayce, is nothing less than unconditional love, genuine respect, equitable partnership, and recognition of your inherent divinity. Not because you are special compared to others, but because we are all unique aspects of the same divine source, and to deny this in ourselves is to deny the very creative force of the universe. There's a particular energy that emanates from people who have learned to authentically say enough. It's a combination of strength and gentleness, of determination and compassion, of firmness and flexibility. They don't need to shout to be heard. They don't need to over-explain themselves. They don't need to ask permission to occupy the space that rightfully belongs to them. This is the point in our conversation where I need to pause and share something important with you. If this message is resonating with your soul, if you feel these words are touching wounds you didn't even know you had, I want to invite you to join our community of awakened souls. Click the subscribe button below and turn on post notifications, because together we are creating a sacred space where people like you can find not only inspiration, but also the practical courage to transform your life. When you subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're connecting with a spiritual family that understands your awakening journey and is here to support you every step of the way. Don't let this moment of inspiration get lost in the whirlwind of everyday life. Click now and be a part of this collective transformation. Returning to our intimate conversation about the transformative power of saying enough, it's important to understand that this awakening doesn't happen overnight. Like all processes of genuine spiritual growth, it unfolds in layers, revealing deeper truths at each stage of the journey. First, you may notice yourself saying enough to obviously toxic situations, abusive relationships, destructive work environments, family dynamics that drain your vital energy. These are the most obvious steps, but they still require considerable courage, because often these situations offered us some kind of familiar safety, even if it was the safety of the predictability of suffering. But as you strengthen in this new vibration of self-worth, you begin to notice more subtle patterns that also deserve a firm and loving enough. Perhaps you realize you're always apologizing for things that aren't your responsibility, or that you're constantly explaining your choices to people who have no real authority over your life. Or maybe you notice you have a habit of downplaying yourself in conversations, of hiding your accomplishments so others feel comfortable, of supporting everyone else's dreams while letting your own wither on the someday shelf. Each of these subtle patterns also deserves its declaration of spiritual independence. Cayce taught that our soul registers not only what we do, but how we feel about what we do. When you act against your own divine nature, when you betray yourself to please others or to avoid conflict, that betrayal is recorded in your consciousness as an energetic wound that can manifest as depression, anxiety, or a generalized feeling of emptiness and disconnection. But when you align your actions with your intrinsic worth, when you live in accordance with the knowledge that you are a divine being disguised as a human, something profoundly healing happens at all levels of your being. It's as if each authentic enough is a balm applied to old wounds, not only from this life, but from multiple incarnations. There are people who carry trauma from lives where they were silenced, where their voices were literally cut off for daring to speak their truth. For these souls, saying enough may initially awaken deep fears of retaliation or abandonment, but when they find the courage to honor their inner truth, they often experience a feeling of liberation that seems disproportionate to the current situation because they are freeing themselves not only from present patterns but from ancient karmic contracts. Other souls may carry memories of lives where they were punished for being too much, for shining too brightly, for occupying too much space. For them, the self-love that awakens after saying enough may come accompanied by an almost frightening feeling of expansion, as if they are finally allowing themselves to occupy the full magnitude of their own light. What's fascinating about Cayce's teachings is how he consistently pointed to the interconnectedness between our individual healing and collective healing. When you heal yourself from patterns of self-denial and embrace your divine worth, you're not just transforming your own life, you're contributing to the elevation of humanity's collective consciousness. Each person who learns to truly love themselves, who stops accepting crumbs and begins to recognize their own inner abundance, becomes a beacon for other souls who are still struggling in the turbulent waters of low self-esteem and codependency. You become living proof that it's possible to break ancestral cycles of self-sacrifice and create a new reality based on mutual love and reciprocal respect. Here's a truth that may surprise you: the more you love and respect yourself, the more capable you are of genuinely loving and respecting others. Self-love isn't selfishness, it's the foundation of all authentic compassion. When you're not constantly seeking external validation or trying to fill internal voids through others, you can relate to people from a place of fullness instead of need. This completely transforms the quality of your relationships. Instead of dynamics based on scarcity, dependency, and subtle manipulation, you begin to attract and cultivate relationships based on conscious choice, mutual growth, and a celebration of each person's inherent worth. But perhaps the most transformative aspect of saying enough and embracing your divine value is how it changes your relationship with life itself. When you stop living as if you're an unwelcome guest in your own existence, when you step into the role of protagonist in your own story instead of a supporting character in everyone else's, your entire experience of being alive transforms. You begin making decisions based on what nourishes your soul instead of what avoids conflict. You start pursuing experiences that expand your consciousness instead of just distracting you from your pain. You begin to see each day not as a series of obligations to be fulfilled, but as a sacred opportunity to express your unique divine frequency in the world. Edgar Cayce often spoke about how each soul comes to Earth with a specific mission, a unique gift to offer to the collective tapestry of human experience. But to discover and fulfill that mission, you first need to liberate yourself from all the ways you've betrayed and diminished yourself over the years. When you finally say enough to living below your divine potential, when you refuse to accept relationships, jobs, or situations that don't honor who you truly are, you create space in your life for your true mission to reveal and manifest itself. And here's something magical: we often discover that our deepest mission has to do with becoming living examples of self-love and divine dignity. When you learn to treat yourself as the sacred being you are, you automatically give permission for others to do the same. Your own transformation becomes a catalyst for the transformation of everyone around you. There's a particular reverence you develop for yourself when you learn to authentically say enough. It's not arrogance or superiority, it's a humble and profound recognition that you carry a unique light that has never existed before and will never exist again. It's a sacred responsibility to honor that light, protect it, nurture it, and allow it to shine in all its magnificence. This reverence for yourself naturally extends to a reverence for all of life. When you recognize your own divinity, you can't help but recognize the divinity that dwells in all things. You begin to see the world with different eyes, to perceive the sacredness that permeates every moment, every encounter, every experience. But perhaps the deepest gift that comes with this awakening is the inner peace that arises when you stop fighting yourself. Throughout your life, there has likely been a silent war raging within you, a part that knew your worth battling another part that had been conditioned to doubt it. When you finally say enough and choose the side of your own divine dignity, that inner war ceases, and inner harmony arises, a sense of finally being at home in your own skin, of finally being aligned with the deepest truth of who you are. This inner peace doesn't mean you'll never face challenges again or that your life will become perfectly smooth. It means you now have a solid center, an inner reference point that can't be shaken by external storms. You know who you are, you know your worth, and no external circumstance can take that away from you. And perhaps most importantly, you develop a deep trust that you deserve love, respect, and happiness, not because you've done anything to earn them, but simply because you exist. This is perhaps the most liberating lesson of all. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone, not even to yourself. Your worth is inherent, it's a given, it's a spiritual fact that precedes all your actions and accomplishments. When this truth finally takes root in your consciousness, when you truly believe you deserve the best life has to offer simply for being who you are, your external reality begins to reorganize to reflect this new inner conviction. Opportunities that once seemed impossible begin to arise. People who resonate with your new frequency are magnetically drawn into your life. Doors that have been closed for years suddenly swing open. This isn't magic in a fantastical sense, it's the natural operation of spiritual laws that Edgar Cayce dedicated his life to understanding and teaching. When you shift your inner frequency, you literally change the kind of experiences you attract into your life. It's quantum physics applied to spiritual transformation, but perhaps the most poignant aspect of this journey is how it changes your relationship with your own past wounds and traumas. Instead of seeing them as evidence of your inadequacy or as reasons to keep your heart closed, you begin to recognize them as the most powerful teachers your soul could have chosen. Each wound becomes a doorway to greater compassion. Each trauma reveals itself as an invitation to discover reserves of strength you didn't even know you possessed. Each experience of rejection or abandonment transforms into an opportunity to learn to love yourself even more unconditionally. This is perhaps the most sacred alchemy of all, transforming wounds into wisdom, pain into power, victimhood into spiritual sovereignty. When you learn to extract the hidden gifts within your most challenging experiences, you become literally invincible, not because nothing can hurt you anymore, but because you know how to transform any experience into fuel for your growth and expansion. Then comes the most beautiful moment of all, when you realize you're no longer living in reaction to your past wounds, but in response to your highest vision of who you can become. You're no longer trying to prove you're worthy of love, you're simply expressing the love you know you are. This is the ultimate freedom that comes after authentically saying enough, the freedom to be exactly who you are, without masks, without apologies, without the need to fit into others' expectations. It's the freedom to occupy all the space your soul naturally wants to occupy, to shine with the full intensity that is your divine birthright. When you reach this place of total self-acceptance and unconditional self-love, you become a force of healing in the world. Your very presence becomes a reminder to others of their own forgotten divinity. You become a mirror in which others can see reflected their own potential for transformation and liberation. And perhaps most importantly, you finally understand that all the suffering you've endured, all the times you betrayed yourself, all the moments you accepted less than you deserved, it was all part of a larger divine plan to bring you to this exact moment of total awakening. You realize you couldn't have arrived at this place of deep, authentic self-love without first experiencing its absence. You couldn't have learned to say enough with such conviction without first saying yes to things your soul knew were unsuitable. You couldn't have discovered your own light without first navigating your own darkness. This realization brings a profound and humble gratitude for your entire journey, not just the beautiful and easy parts, but especially the difficult and painful parts that were your greatest teachers in disguise. You finally understand that every experience without exception contributed to sculpting the masterpiece of consciousness you have become. And then from the depths of your transformed heart arises a silent question that echoes through all the corridors of your soul. If you knew with absolute certainty that you deserve to be loved exactly as you are in this moment, what change would you make first in your life? And what enough is your soul begging you to finally pronounce with the conviction of someone who knows their own divine worth?